Namaskar, I am Rajendra Salokhe. Welcome to my systematic opening series. This is part 3. We already completed two parts. Now I go on making part 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. And what happens is, one of my videos, it has happened that part 4 is seen by more than 1,000 of people, and part 1 to 3 have a very less response. I don't know how people jump to part 4 without viewing the previous parts. In opening it may not matter, but I recommend that you view 1 and 2 parts also. So I am going about very systematically about all the defenses, most of the defenses. I cannot say all, most of the major defenses I will be covering in my systematic series, and I think it will take one whole year to cover all the openings, because maximum videos I have to make in 3 languages. So one day I can make only one video, and I am going to introduce Kannada and probably Gujarati also if possible. So Sicilian defense, in part 1 and 2 we discuss about difference between open and closed Sicilian. Then we discussed the moves of closed Sicilian. We saw some traps and game. Then Smith-Mora gambit we discussed, so I have put a tick mark here. And this video will be displaying Alapin variation. ECO code is B22. So let us revise a little. The first we saw was the closed Sicilian variation, which was E4, C5 and knight to C3. Because this knight does not support D4 square, it is a closed variation, and that is the mostly main move of the closed variation. Otherwise, from the definition you see Grand Prix attack also is a closed variation. Now then we saw Smith-Mora gambit. Initial moves were E4, C5 and D4. Directly this pawn goes to D4, and further moves were there by which we recognize whether it is a gambit accepted or rejected, declined. So now we are studying the Alapin variation. The moves are E4, C5 and C3. So many times it is called as C3 Sicilian also, and very dangerous. Very, in fact, advantageous for black, and but very few people play this variation. As a Sicilian variation is full of traps. Maximum traps you will find in Sicilian defense. So we will see some games in which traps are there. So this is one game: E4, C5, C3, C3 Sicilian, D6, D4. These are the common moves. Knight C6, Knight C3, Bishop G4. Now he pins the knight here to the queen. D5, plays knight to E5. Now by playing knight to E5, let's see further. Knight to E5. Where is the white? Sorry, white plays knight cross E5. I have taken it inwards. Normally I take black at my side. So this is, so I got a little confused. So now it seems there is a threat to this queen. So it seems that by mistake he has made this move, and this queen is losing the queen. It's not that. Now takes the queen, of course. It's like that legal mate is there. You see that legal mate is just fantastic mate. I have made a video on that legal mate. So it takes the bishop here. threatening the king. Sorry, checking the, giving a check, not threatening. Okay, so he has to put queen in between. So he puts queen in between. Then bishop crosses the queen, king goes to d8. Then this knight crosses f7. Now you have to be very cautious about the f7 black. Mostly the initial attack is on f7 and very vulnerable square. So king crosses the bishop, and here knight crosses this, and then after that this knight crosses the rook. So white is in very advantageous position. So this is one trap that initially you don't recognize. Now second trap or game, whatever we'll see, trap in a game, d5, e cross d5, queen cross d5, knight to f3, e6, d4. This Sicilian Alapin also, this queen comes out early. Bishop to d3, c4, threatening the bishop. Now it takes the queen here to a4 and gives a check. Now what he thinks is that the opponent will put the bishop in between and then he can cross it. Like, you know, I'll show you 1 minute. He thinks that he'll put the bishop here and he'll cross this and again offer for queens for exchange. But he forgot about the pawn here at b7. Okay, so when he gives a check, black plays pawn to b5. Now he cannot cross the pawn, so he has to move the queen. So queen goes back to c2 and loses the bishop. So this is one of the traps. And while playing chess, I've seen one learning method where they give you a sort of puzzle and they say think of all the moves. They'll give a check to the king and think of all the moves, starting from king, then queen, then rook, then bishop and knight, and then pawn, what all of them can do. So in some puzzles there are about 15 16 moves possible. So here one must think of all the moves. He just thought that he'll put the bishop in between, but he forgot about the pawn. He should think of what king can do, what rook can do, what this knight can do, and all that, for our pieces also and for opponent pieces also. Well, I'll make a video on that also. This very, it's for the kids and very early beginners, but I think the good players should also practice that, solve those puzzles. Now this is another Sicilian Alapin variation, almost a similar trap, but it is a different game. I have taken games from queen cross d5, d4, c cross d4, knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4 and pinning. These are the very common moves. Then he puts the bishop in between. G cross f3 crosses, bishop cross f3, and queen cross d4 is the wrong move, because now what he thought is he can take the, you don't go for the pawn with a big risk like losing the queen, you know. That is one important thing about this chess also, that don't chase after the pawns. So for pawn, he went for a pawn here, but now he forgot that there is a discovery attack or something, or removing the defender style, and you get a check here. Bishop cross c6, you get a check, and when you remove the check, you lose the queen. Now black removes the check and black loses the queen, so black game is lost. So you should think of that, whether your defender, such an important piece, whether and you are putting it to threat, and whether the defender is threatened, that should be thought. Now this is another game. I written who plays and all that, taken from the chess databases. E4, C5, C3, knight C6, D4, C cross D4, C cross D4, D5, knight C3, D cross E4, D5, knight E5, queen goes to here and gives a check, puts a bishop in between, so queen crosses this pawn again, so knight goes here to G6, knight goes to B5, he puts it knight on F6. Now you see how congested this is, and should be always aware of this. I showed us exact similar trap in Caro-Kann defense. Now just see this E7 pawn is pinned, so you just put a knight here, it is a checkmate. This game was won in just 10 moves. Opponent mate it is. King is surrounded by his own enemy and these own pieces, own soldiers, and they are not allowing the king to move. So, and just now you put a knight here, this E7 pawn cannot capture the knight, and it is a checkmate in 10 moves. Now this is a game taken place between Aaron Nimzowitsch and Kopa Iganci. Now we should always study what great people, how they play and all that. So I give some game of big grandmasters and world champions also to study. I know it's a little boring to study these games, because they rarely make any mistake. But see here, some mistakes are made, not by Nimzowitsch but by that other fellow. Queen cross D4 is the common. Knight F6, bishop E3, E6, knight to F3, knight to D7. In D7 is a very important move in many games like Caro-Kann opening. It is most important move in D7. In here also it suppose this another knight, but he blocks the this white square black bishop. C4, threatening the queen. Queen to D6, knight C3, C cross D4. There was a fork, but removable fork. Pawn forks are very dangerous. I have made a video on pawn forks. So, but you can capture the pawn. Bishop E7, queen to C2, black castles, bishop E2, rook E8, white castles, knight E5, H3, A6, rook to D1, C7, queen to C7, rook to C1. Here he has gathered a double force on this C file. So bishop goes to D7, C5, queen cross C5, knight cross E6. Now see, there is a double attack on this queen, by this knight also and by this bishop also. So you cannot capture the knight either by this bishop or by the pawn, because this threat is there. No material loss so far. Queen goes to C8, knight goes to F4, bishop C6, knight A4, bishop to D8, This bishop with the help of knight goes here. Bishop c7, knight d3, knight cross d3. Here it crosses the knight. Bishop cross d3, so no material loss. Bishop f4. Now this bishop is threatening this rook. It moves the rook to b1. Queen goes to e6 and there is double force again on the e file. Knight c5, queen to e5, bishop to f1, queen to g5, knight d3, bishop d6, bishop c5, bishop c7, bishop e3, queen to g6, threatening this white queen. So you cannot move the knight. White queen doesn't have any support here. So knight goes, says threatens the bishop also and gives support to the queen also. Bishop to e4 and threatens the queen. Again knight comes in between. Knight d5, queen to b3, knight cross e3. Knight is forking this rook and bishop. But it goes f cross e3, queen to g3, no material loss, both have equal material so far. Knight f4, bishop cross f4, e cross f4, queen crosses this. Now he just, see, now he went for a bishop and he just forgot a threat here. This bishop is threatening the rook here. So rook was in fact required to be moved, but he went for the bishop and made a mistake here. Went for the bishop. So just queen captures the queen. You have to capture with the pawn, and now your rook is gone. Rook is gone. So rook capture bishop. So white is less by rook and more by bishop, and pawns are same, number of pawns. So it lost this thing here, rook here. Rook to c7, b5, rook to a7, g6, f5, g cross f5. Now it's double the pawn. It is almost going towards end game. So doubling the pawn is advantageous because they will be moving on the same file. So their movement is obstructed or restricted. Rook to f6 captures the pawn. Knight cross f5. So in fact position and worsened for white because white is less by one pawn and rook, while black is less by one bishop. Considering the overall position, king to h2, rook to b1, trying to double here, bishop e2, king to g7, supporting both the pawns. Now its pawn is going up h4. It threatens the bishop. Bishop goes to f3. Rook goes to c3. King goes to s3, s6. King g4. Pawn to b4. King to h5. Rook to f2. Rook to b5, b3. Bishop d1, b2, bishop f3, c5, rook cross c5, and now this pawn goes here and becomes a queen. He could not prevent, white could not prevent it. Now black is as very advantageous position and white resigned. So further moves I found out through computer. So it's an end game, and possibly if both of them play best moves, then this will be like this: rook g5 check, h cross g5, king cross g5, queen goes to g6 check, king to f4, queen cross g2. Now it's difficult for white, in fact. King e4, queen cross f3 and check, king to d4, queen to d1 and check, king to e3, queen to d2 and check, king to e4, rook to f4 and check, king to e5, and queen to d4 and checkmate. So the further moves were given by the computer. So this is all about Alapin variation, also called as 3 Sicilian. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe this channel. And I am studying this thing from various material available through net and putting forward it to presenting it to you as a matter of study only. And I don't suggest that you play like this, or I am not at all responsible for how you play, or depending upon my studies. Thank you.